I want to be clear about something before I go into any of this. I actually have massive respect for medieval Muslims and what they achieved, specifically with the Muslim conquests. There's no doubt that a huge amount of energy and fanaticism went into creating the vast Muslim empires that ended up eating up the Persians and most of the what was remaining of the Roman Empire, and the Germanic kingdoms in North Africa and Spain as well, and into France. There's no doubt that huge amounts of skill, many thousands of men killed, the amount of blood spilt, the amount of effort it would have taken, the fruits of the victory they enjoyed, they earned that by conquest, because that was the rule of the day. There were no liberal values, there was no hegemon of the world, there was no supranational organization like the UN or something to condemn or to intercede or anything like this. The order of the day was you could keep it, you had it if you could keep it, and you could keep it if you could defend it. There were many ways of doing this. You could do it by subterfuge, you could do it by force of arms, you could do it by diplomacy. There were many ways of establishing and keeping what you had, but that was the way the world worked, and everyone understood that. And they were the rules by which everyone played. So when the Spanish finally managed to drive the Muslims out of Spain, all was fair in love and war. And let's be very, very clear about this. The Muslims did not gain Spain peacefully. They gained it through war, through conquest, through violent bloodshed, and everyone understood that was what would happen. And so in 1492, when the was it Emirate of Granada, I think it was, finally fell, okay, well, that was that. That was the way things went. You tried, you failed, but, no one was... it wasn't like people thought, oh, well, that wasn't fair. You had a good run, you did your best, and the Christians managed to win back Spain. So 500 years later, when the Muslims are asking for an apology from Spain for being defeated by the Spanish because their invasion failed, well, I don't even know if you'd say it failed. The conquest failed. The invasions were very successful. They got something like 3/4 of Spain under their control for 800 or so years. It seems kind of ridiculous. It's really weird to go up to someone, start a fight, have a really long protracted fight with them, and then when they finally kick your ass, say, well, now you owe me an apology. No. And I'm amazed that any other Muslims think this. I mean, so last night I was in a pub and I was chatting with a guy who was from Palestine, and one of his main complaints about the way that the leftists view Muslims is that he found them to view Muslims as inferior, and he didn't like it. He did not like it at all. And the thing is, he wasn't even a Muslim himself. He was an atheist. But he was like, look, he was talking about the Arabs, I suppose, specifically, saying, well, look, Arabs, they're not weak. They're not incapable or incompetent. They've had a glorious history, and they'd like to celebrate that. But they can't do that if the left continually treats them as victims. They can't be proud of the achievements of their ancestors, in the same way that other people would like to be proud of the achievements of their ancestors. It's what binds them together as a culture and a people, and it's a shared history that they all enjoy. He wanted to be able to do that. But if the West is if Western leftists, white leftists, want to make the Arabs, in his opinion, the victims of the medieval era, well then that's kind of disempowering. That's insulting, frankly. That's the sort of opinion a white supremacist would have. Because, I mean, like, when Saladin and Richard the Lionheart were doing battle, it's not like any one of them were thinking, well, the other side's inferior, so they can't possibly win. We can't possibly be defeated. No, it was a life and death clash between two opponents who were very well matched in many ways and had a lot of respect for one another, even if they disagreed. Because you couldn't help but have respect for a powerful enemy. You have to respect that. You don't have a choice, because otherwise you become arrogant and complacent, and you'll probably end up losing. So it's one of those things where it's like, the very idea that we're going to infantilize an entire culture, and like huge, like many countries worth of people now, over things that happened hundreds of years ago is frankly pathetic. But and it's really rather disappointing seeing Muslims playing into this, because, I mean, like, again, I do respect Islam as a culture. I understand that it's a powerful force. And again, you can't you can't disrespect that. You have to have respect for their accomplishments as a noble enemy, if nothing else. You know, and an enemy of Western Christendom, which is my heritage. Not that I think we should be having crusades now or jihads now, obviously, but there is a kind of meta-narrative that spans the centuries, the thousands of years since these conflicts have been going on, that I think forms that really does have a kind of place of pride in both cultures' histories. And I think that that's very evident in Spain, because, I mean, I went to Spain a couple of years ago on holiday, and man, Spanish history is not very politically correct. It's rather Islamophobic, in fact. I mean, all the sort of ancient, or not ancient, but, you know, sort of Renaissance artworks that the Spanish have are all Spanish men killing Muslim men. I mean, it's, you know, knights on horseback, but it's always a Spanish knight killing a Muslim knight. And yeah, so it's pretty glorious, really. And you'd think that would be something that could be celebrated, you know. Anyway, I mean, I say this in the sort of spirit of, and again, I come back to the sort of Richard the Lionheart and Saladin conflict in the Third Crusade, because the Christians didn't win the Third Crusade. Saladin, the Muslims, won the Third Crusade. But it's not like people think ill of the Muslims after that in modern day. People don't think, oh, the Muslims, they were evil or this or weak or pathetic or anything like that. No, they generally see Saladin as being a noble warrior king who led his people to victory, and a well-earned victory at that, because he was against probably the finest general in Europe at the time. So it's not like it wasn't something respectable. And it is worthy of respect, even if you personally don't like Islam as a governing system, and you fear it's encroaching on the West once again, etc., etc. Even if that's the case, you still have to have respect for these things, in my opinion. So anyway, let's get to the modern Muslims who are deciding to prostrate themselves to the cult of apology and victimhood that we apparently are succumbing to in the modern West. And obviously this does come hot on the heels of the last video I did, which is when the president of Mexico was asking for an apology from the King of Spain. Now that makes more sense, because it's not like the Aztecs did anything to the Spanish. However, when the Muslims are doing it, it's kind of ridiculous, and you can go and do one, my son. So the Ishbilla Mosque published a post on Facebook under the name of the Islamic community itself and the president. I can't pronounce that. Yeah, no, I can. Yihad Sarasua, I think. In expressing the sentiments among Spanish Muslims and for those who, among certain reasons, reside in Spain for the lack of conciliation between the crowns and the heirs of the Andalusian legacy. You mean the losers? Right. Okay. Sir, being the King of Spain, I believe that the historical moment has arrived to carry out the recognition of the vileness, plunder, and displacement and murders carried out by the orders of the Muslim imams. Oh, sorry, the Muslim caliphs, the Catholic kings. Right, sorry, the Catholic, of course. You know, the Muslim atrocities in Spain, totally fine. Don't worry about those. I mean, God, I'm not going to. I should probably have gone through and got a list of atrocities so we could have counted them up. But anyway, the Catholic kings and their most direct collaborators, which culminated with the surrender of Granada and the breach of everything that's subscribed to by the Muslim community. No, you fucking losers. That's too bad. You lost, they won, get over it. Besides, he has that the Muslims were subjected to a constant persecution that left millions dead. Oh, really? Was that after the constant persecution of Christians that left millions dead? You see, all fair in love and war. That's the way them's were the breaks for all of human history, right up until the modern day. So no, you don't get an apology. In my opinion, you shouldn't be getting an apology. And I think it's embarrassing that you would ask for one. No. That was something you lost. There are plenty of things like the British had been invading Afghanistan like 3 times. Do we deserve an apology from the Afghanis for being beaten by them? No. You know, that's a feather in their cap. That's something they achieved. That's not something that we can sit there and go, well, we're so angry that you kicked our asses when we were invading your country. Get bent. What a ridiculous thing to ask for. What an absolutely, as if you're entitled to invade someone else's country and reside there and persecute those people. And if you get kicked out and you get persecuted and you defeated, oh no, suddenly we're the victims. Absolutely ridiculous. You must be having a laugh, my son. Never has existed such a fierce persecution and eagerness to eliminate a religious community as was carried out by the old Spanish royalties in the time of Philip II, the extermination that culminated in the War of the Alpujarras, subsequent to the Pragmatic Sanction of 1567. Well, that's a topic for a hot debate, isn't it? You know, it's not like Muhammad did any kind of religious persecution himself, is it? It's not like any of the Muslims who conquered the Middle East did any kind of Muslim persecution. Ask the Zoroastrians how religious persecution operates when being done by Islam. Honestly, the fucking sanctimoniousness of this. The idea that they can paint Islam as having never committed any kind of religious persecution. What is happening to Christians in Africa right now? Thousands dead each year. In fact, 1,000 in the last month. In February, 1,000 Christians in churches blown up by suicide bombers. No, you do not get to claim to be the victims of the wars Muslims started. No way. As a descendant of the aforementioned kings, what a formidable opportunity you would have to demonstrate to the Muslim community your respect and your discrepancy with the Islamic theses, apologizing to our community for so many atrocities and interceding for the recognition of Spanish nationality for the sense of Al-Andalus, which was done with the Sephardic Jewish community. So far, King Philippe has not responded to the Muslim leader's request. Well, I tell you what, you can get an apology after you've apologized. How about that? After you apologize for Muslim atrocities done to Christians in the Middle Ages, then that you can have an empty apology from the Spanish king. Why not? Why not? Why wouldn't you want to agree to that, given how you were committing atrocities against them first? Why wouldn't you? I mean, what I'm saying is, you know, the Catholics from Spain didn't come to Arabia and start kicking around the Muslims. Oh no, the Muslims came from Arabia and started kicking around the Spanish. So no, you aren't entitled to an apology, and you are ridiculous and embarrassing for asking for one. And again, you should be proud of the fact that it took 800 years for the Spanish to kick you out of their country. That is a hell of a long time. That is a hell of an example of Muslim strength so far from the heartlands of Islam, and yet it took 800 years, all across the length of Africa, to the Muslims managed to dominate for that amount of time and convert to Islam. And the very extremity of your empire on the western side, and it took them 800 years just to take one country back. You should be proud of the effort and the struggle and the strength of Islam in that regard, and the Spanish should be proud of the strength of their heritage and their ancestors for being able to resist such a powerful force. All around this, right, there could be a narrative of pride on both sides of this conflict and mutual respect. Instead, you want a narrative of shame and weakness and victimhood and mutual self-hatred regarding it. And I think that is completely the opposite way to go with any of this. And I think that if the Spanish didn't apologize to the Native Americans, who you could at least claim had a legitimate grievance because they didn't exactly start it, then they certainly shouldn't apologize to the Muslims, who absolutely did.